To whom shall we look if not to the Creator of light? We need fortitude and courage when pain and loss assail us. Where shall we find them if not in the thought of the one who preserves all that is good from destruction? All things pass. All that lives must die. All that we prize is but lent to us, and the time comes when we must surrender it. We are travelers on the same road that leads to the same end. O eternal God of life, there are days when our burdens overwhelm us, when our paths are littered with rocks and snags. Although we gather in the full light of day, our world is darkened by the shadow of death. Help us, O God, to find light even in these dark moments, and enable us to hear the music of life even as we gather surrounded by the silence of death. Help us to draw comfort and courage from each other and from our memories of the times that we shared with Sandra. We listen to words of our tradition, searching for meaning, searching for comfort, words reminding us of the blessings of life. This is a time of memory. Wounded by loss, we retreat from life. Here we gather to share stories and prayers, unanswered questions, tears that need to be shed. We recall a life now carried within us, the life of Sandra Paskus. Moments of courage and laughter and pain. We embrace them all. Our hearts open in sorrow. We are all time's subjects, and all that we love we must surrender. And so let us hold fast to the love that remains and cherish the light of the sun, even while walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Today we all walk the mourner's path. May we find strength from those who gather by our sides. We who remember our artist, aerialist on a swinging trapeze, letting go of one ring to catch hold of another. Hold on and let go. A subtle duality that endows our life with meaning, neither denying the past nor foreclosing the future. We are part of the flow of life, the divine process, which gives and takes, creates and retains. We too must give, we too must take, and at the same time, we also must release. This is a time of remembering, for it is through remembering that we show gratitude for a life that has been but loaned to us. And so let us apply the healing ointment of memory to our wounded hearts. I first met Sandy when I became the rabbi at Temple Beth Or in 2008. Yet there is so much more to Sandra than those past dozen years. I am grateful to Eileen and Leslie, who shared so much about their mother and from whom we shall hear. Sandra was born 66 years ago to Larry and Lillian Dean in Chicago. She is one of two daughters born to the Deans and is preceded in death by her parents, by her sister, Susan Arlene, and by her son, Stephen. 86 years. We marvel at the history that Sandy lived and that Sandy experienced. The year that Sandy entered the world was the same year that welcomed the game of Monopoly. Sandy was 1 year old when nylon was invented. She was 3 years old when the shopping cart was invented. 4 years old when the ballpoint pen was invented. Instant coffee was invented. And unfortunately, when Kristallnacht occurred, spelling the beginning of the end of much of European Jewry. She was 7 years old when the United States entered World War II. She was 8 years old when the first electronic computer was built, but it required multiple air conditioners to keep it from catching on fire. And now we carry them in our pockets. She was 9 when Silly Putty was invented, the Slinky was invented, and when Jacques Cousteau invented what was called then the aqua lung, what would later be called scuba gear. She was 10 years old when FDR was elected to his 4th term in office. She was 11 when World War II came to an end, 13 when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, 14 when Frisbee, the Wurlitzer jukebox, Velcro was invented, and when Israel became a modern state. She was 15 years old when cake mix was invented. Maybe that's why she was so talented in the kitchen. She couldn't just reach for Betty Hines or Betty Crocker, rather. Heinz and Duncan and Betty Crocker and just mix up the cake. She had to know the recipes. And again, that's just the beginning of her life. We have yet to get to space travel, landing on the moon, the internet, cell phones, all the things that we have in our modern life. I learned that Sandra's father, Larry, was a radio host in Chicago, was very talented and became a proficient sound engineer, and thus headed west with his family. Here he went to work with Disney. Even Leslie recalled playing with Walt's grandchildren in the studio. Larry would work at CBS on shows like Gunsmoke and on other shows, Gilligan's Island, My Favorite Martian. Sandy would grow up, attend school, grow up in a musically talented family, and became herself musically talented, artistic woman that she would become. She would meet Bob Paskus, initially at a B'nai B'rith event, but it took several events, a couple weddings at which Sandy was a bridesmaid and Bob was a groomsman. It took several events before it finally clicked. And when it did, it clicked well. Sandy and Bob were married in 1954, and together they would travel the roads of life together for 37 years. They would share in the joys and the nightmares of parenthood. Bob and Sandy would add to their family tree 3 children, Leslie, Eileen, and Stephen, a family tree that has grown to include 4 grandchildren, Lillian, Charles, Robert, and Madison. Sadly, Bob would die in 1991, and all the more tragically, Sandy would have to face the death of her son, Stephen, in 1996. And Sandy rose to both of those challenges of life with courage, with strength, and with poise. We are blessed to be able to hear from family members. Instead of sharing echoes of memories that were shared with me, we turn instead to hear from family members directly. I invite Leslie to speak. And Leslie, if you'd like to stay there, I will reposition the camera for you.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Whenever you are ready.
Okay. Sandra Joan Paskus, loving wife, mother, grandmother, aunt, cousin, friends. She embodied so many things to so many people. But one of the greatest joys of her life, beyond the 3 kids, would be the friendships that were started with Temple Beth Or and have continued through the passing of Mom. She had so many great friends in the temple. And that's not to say that some of the endeavors that she undertook weren't of equal import, but this is what carried her and guided her. And to be creating such wonderful relationships under the eyes of God makes it that much more special. She loved everything to do with temple life. Some would say maybe a little too much. Some would say, meh. We knew that was what sustained her. And not participating was anathema to her. She wanted to be involved and took every opportunity to do so. And we love her and support her for that. There's a very special place at the hand of God where someone or many someones sit and reflect on what they could do, what could they have done, Mom should be sitting there feeling pretty proud of what she accomplished in her 86 years on this planet. She loved fiercely. And not only one husband, but she also had a heck of a boyfriend a little later with Leo Lofty. The sadness is that it was for a very short time period, but she looked upon it as I've had one great love, and then God bestowed upon me a second great love. And for that, she was ever grateful. Personally, I remember growing up, and when she first started doing musical theater, we were blown away. Her talent was evident, and the joy she derived from it was evident. And we all hoped that some of that talent would pass down. And I think it did. I know I enjoyed doing theater for many years. My son seems to have taken that up as well, and we have my mom to thank for that. She also was so musically gifted. One fond memory I have is when she sang with the symphony in La Mirada. I don't think I ever felt a prouder moment when her voice was at its strongest. And the feeling of sheer joy that just went through me, and I know many others as well, hearing that voice as a brilliant, brilliant singer. She also played a lot of piano with my aunt and her mother. Grandma Jean, Susan Arlene, and Sandra Paskus would do duets, would do, I don't know what you call it when there's three of them. Triplets? Oh, trio, of course, trio. But many a Sunday, in fact, most Sundays, that's where the three of them would be when we would go to my grandparents' home. And the laughter and the joy they derived from that was inescapable. I only wish that that could have continued so that our children would know of what incredible, incredible things she was capable of doing. She was my best friend for a few decades. I mean, literally, my best friend. She and I had an affinity for cards. Wildly inappropriate, hysterically funny cards. We really weren't into the nice ones. We were into the ones that had us rolling on the floor of Macy's with laughter, literally unable to catch our breath because we're laughing so hard. It was one of my greatest joys to do that with her. And we also loved taking trips. Travel was huge to Sandra, to my mom, to her friends, to her family. She loved taking trips. And I think she saw most of where she wanted to go. I can't think of too many places. She did get to Australia, where her dear friend Ralph lived, and they kept a friendship that lasted for eons. He was a former accompanist and a dear friend. And she made them wherever she went. Ralph isn't the only one she made friends with. She was beloved by a lot of people I'll probably never know. She was a very giving and caring person. Over the years, she volunteered for ORT. She volunteered and got deeply involved with several organizations, including Musical Theater West, the Temple, of course, number one. She also got very involved with the City of Hope, actually before my dad needed their services. That was something she was involved in for many years. And obviously, they took such great care of Dad that she was forever grateful. She enjoyed all the accomplishments of her grandchildren and her children and made us feel good about where we were going. And when we needed her, she was always there. She might develop a bit about it, but she was always there for us, whatever we needed. In conclusion, I would just like to say that we've lost someone quite astonishing, and she can never be replaced. But we can hold her dear in our hearts and think of her and send our well wishes. I know she's in heaven. I know that she's playing poker with the family because it's what they all did. And so everybody in the family is lined up at that giant table my grandparents had. Playing a hand now, talking a little bit later, noshing. It's what I feel good thinking of her as. So I ask you all to maybe jot down something that you in particular enjoyed, and maybe we can share that all down the road. That would mean a lot to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie, thank you so very much for speaking from your heart about your mom and carrying forward memories from both you and Eileen and even Stephen of those times. It is important for us to note as well that for Temple, Sandy was an institution by herself. I first met her when I was interviewing at Temple Beth Or to become rabbi. There was a informal gathering at her home and had a chance to meet not only her, but members of her family and members of the community. And of course, for Temple, she is not only a founding member, she and Bob were founding members of Temple Beth Or, but she's a past president of Temple Beth Or, a past sisterhood president. For our congregation, Sandy was involved in creating many of the Purim spiels that our religious school students did, that included all kinds of music and dance, as one would expect from a woman so musically talented. Our high holiday services have benefited directly because of Sandra's generosity and her giving. Through her, we are able to have musical accompaniment during our high holiday services, and I am grateful to her support and her generosity. She also helped create the Sisterhood Mensch Award, which is a award presented from the sisterhood to a male member of the temple who has been helpful to the sisterhood and to Temple. Indeed, Joanne Kotkin, current sisterhood president, shares the following remarks on behalf of the Temple Beth Or sisterhood. Sandra will always be remembered as a passionate member and supporter of sisterhood. She is one of the founding members who helped make sisterhood what it is today. She served as sisterhood president multiple times. She was one of the first recipients of the Ethel Shine Award, which is given to a sisterhood woman who has gone above and beyond. She showed her continual love of sisterhood by always being ready and willing to give her advice and labor to make sisterhood better. She also appreciated brotherhood and created the Mensch of the Year Award to recognize those men who went out of the way to support sisterhood and temple. Her fun-loving spirit, dedication, and voice will be deeply missed, but her memory will certainly live on. She even filled in for our cantor previously when our cantor went on maternity leave. And now she loved to sing and help the members of Temple Beth Or in preparation for their bar mitzvah and other tutoring events. Sandra was indeed truly an institution in our congregation and in our community. Definitely one of our pillars. Our community is weakened by her death, but her memory will give us strength to keep our community, to keep Temple Beth Or, and to keep the family going. We have, for those of you who are viewing, and for those of us here, we'll have the opportunity to hear a special video. We were blessed to have as one of our cantorial soloists, Kyle Kotler, the son of Doug Kotler. And Kyle brought to our congregation a song that is part of our anthem and indeed is part of our worship services, and a song that Sandra deeply loved. The song is known as Listen, and it is built on the words of the Shema, one of our fundamental prayers in our worship services. We have a video to show. I will turn the sound up on my computer so we'll be able to hear it as well.
If you're lost, you feel afraid, and you don't know what to say, then listen, listen to our God. Is there a question on your mind? Is the answer hard to find? Then listen, listen to our God. Listen with all your heart and soul, and with all your might. Write them and learn them and teach them well, every morning and night. Close your eyes and listen. There's nothing to say. Stop all the chatter that gets in the way, and listen, listen to our God. When the wind and the thunder finally disappear, there's still a voice that you will hear if you listen, listen to our God. You can hear it from the top of the highest hill, or from the valley below. It can come from the edge of the universe. It can come from within your soul. So close your eyes and listen. listen to our God. If you're lost, you feel afraid, and you don't know what to say, then listen to our God.
Sandy helped perform in that video where we had included sign language under the instruction and tutelage of Susan Carey, and created for our congregation a new minhag, a new custom. For me, Sandy was also known as the caffeine woman, because she was part of our religious committee that helps organize and run our worship services and the high holiday services. And I had mentioned that it would be very important that the rabbi receive a cup of caffeinated coffee at the end of the worship service, as decaffeinated coffee was the coffee of choice in the congregation. Sandy made sure that there was a fresh cup of coffee. As we concluded Havdalah on Yom Kippur, I could look up and see Sandra Paskus coming with a special thermos cup of coffee, freshly brewed, caffeinated coffee to recharge my batteries. May we find comfort and strength from all who gather with us, both here and virtually. May we be comforted in the knowledge that Sandra rests in eternal peace in an Olam Haba, the world to come. Sandy has been gathered to her kin. Sandy died during the week in which we read the Torah portion known as Shmot, the beginning of the book of Exodus. This portion begins with a recounting of the journey of the Israelites, but it importantly calls out the days of the lives of Jacob and of Joseph and of all that generation. Thus, at the beginning of the book, we are connected with our past. We recall our ancestors. Yet the book continues, and the story continues. And so it is with us today. The story of Sandra Paskus' life continues through her family, her children, her grandchildren, through her community, Temple Beth Or, through all the friends who knew Sandra. The story continues, even though she herself has exited our world. Although Sandra is no longer physically with us, she will always be a part of us through the good deeds that she performed and the many ways in which she touched our lives. We pause to remember and to reflect and to cherish the life of this, our mother, grandmother, cousin, dear friend, Sandra Paskus. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember Sandra. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember Sandra. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember Sandra. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember Sandra. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, so too shall Sandra live, for she is now a part of us. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, notea betochenu chaye olam. We praise you, our eternal God, sovereign of the universe, who forms us in the divine image, who nourishes and sustains us, and who implants immortal life within us. And let us say, Amen. Amen. Merit Malloy wrote, "When I die, give what's left of me away to children and to old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words, better than sounds. Look for me in the people I've known and the people I've loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away." We come to one of two of the traditional prayers that we will share during our memorials, during our funeral service. The prayer is known as the El Malei Rachamim, which speaks of God as a compassionate being. Yet it is a prayer that we share at the most difficult times in our lives, at funerals, at memorial services. And yet it calls to mind an important lesson about the world in which we live. The opposite of love is not hate. Ask any child, any parent, any sibling. The opposite of love is apathy. And where there's apathy, there is no grief, there's no pain, there's no sense of loss. But neither is there any love. Neither is there any joy or any laughter. We live in a world blessed by God's love. And so we live in a world filled with these very powerful emotions. You can find the words to the El Malei on page 20 in your memorial booklets. On page 23. No, page 20. I would ask that we rise as we are able, to stand as we are able, as a tribute to Sandy's memory and to all that she brought to our world. El Malei Rachamim Shovhein Bamromim Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Toharim Kizohar Haraki Amazirim Et Nishmat Sima Yehudit Bat Eliyahu V'Leah Shachala Olama Began Eden Tehi Menuchata Baal Harachamim Yastireo Beseter Kanafecha Le'olamim V'yitzvor HaChayim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'tanuach Beshalom Al Mishkava V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved Sandra Paskus, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence. And there in the shadow of your wings, let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May Sandra rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. We may be seated. Judaism teaches us that we share intimately in all acts of life and living on this planet. And that when we bring our loved ones to these sacred and hallowed grounds, we leave the task not only to strangers, but that we share in bringing them here with all the love and the honor that they deserve. And so we are present for the lowering of the casket, after which we will recite the words of the Kaddish, and then those who would like to are invited to shovel in some shovelfuls of dirt. our parting gift of love to Sandra Paskus. Each of us has a name. Each of us has a name given by the source of life and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by our sins and given by our longing. Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. We say shalom and not goodbye. For shalom is goodbye and hello and wholeness and peace, all threaded together in one breath. And in one breath, we too say goodbye to a hand to hold, a kiss, and in tight embrace. And in the same breath of shalom, we say hello to an ocean of memories and a rush of emotion, gratitude and sorrow, tears and laughter, trembling and fatigue, all in one breath. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the soul which we lay within the earth. The soul itself does not die. Oh God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, and that the pain which loss inflicts is a measure of a love that is stronger than death. All things pass. All that lives must die. All that we prize is but lent to us, and the time comes when we must surrender it. We are travelers on the same road that leads to the same end. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping, as we repeat the words hallowed by the generations, the words of our Kaddish, which you can find on page 22 in the memorial booklets. The Kaddish never mentions the word death or grief or loss. Instead, it is a prayer that extols the greatness of God and names the mystery that is at the heart of life. The prayer began as a prayer by our rabbis at the period of a conclusion of a period of study. A book of the Bible, a tractate of the Talmud, the rabbis having spent time together, having laughed, having loved, having learned together, argued together, debated together, as they were about to leave and set forth on their journey, not knowing when their paths would cross again, they took the opportunity to acknowledge the great mystery at the heart of life, that we are meeting people just right when we need to. That Sandy's parents met each other and gave us Sandy. That Sandy and Bob met each other and gave us Leslie and Eileen and Stephen. And that all of our paths have intertwined with this one woman. And in her presence, we lived, we loved, we argued, we debated, we laughed. As a tribute to Sandy's memory, to all that she brought to our world, I ask us to rise as we are able for the Kaddish, the sanctification of Sandy's memory. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, v'yalma divrach yirateh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabba mevarach, le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalo, shemei d'kudusha b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'amla v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Say shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May all of us who mourn and all of us who are bereaved, may we find strength and courage from those who gather by our sides. And may we find through God's eternal presence a source of courage, hope, and above all, a source of shalom, of peace. And let us all say, amen. This concludes our funeral service for Sandra Paskus. Those who would like to shovel in some shovelfuls of dirt, or perhaps drop in some flowers if you would choose to do that, may do so at this time. We could wheel Leslie down to here, and at least here she could hold the shovel.
Oh, I didn't think about the bug. Sorry, Phil. Okay. Are you still using?
Yeah, we're feeding the group.
Yes, yes.
We're feeding the shovels.
So,
Yeah.
why was it supposed to touch the shower? You can. Oh, sorry. Oh. You can use your hand or the Did you want to take the flowers home with you, sis?
What?
Right, did you want to take the flowers home with you? The red ones.
I thought you were supposed to leave it.
Okay. I don't know what.
They'll put it on top of the grape when they're done.
You will-
closing,
oh, they
but
will.
You can
Okay.
take some if you want. And this beautiful bouquet.
I know.
Take
I know.
one.
No. You want to put it on there?
Leslie, do you need some assistance?
Yeah.
I really feel emotionally drained. Like I just want to go home right now. You know? Do you remember when ABCs was there? Thank you. Yeah, Grandma Rose.
Jamie.
Having brought Sandra to this sacred and hallowed place, we turn our attention to the wounds of the living. Normally, we would all meet for food and continued conversations and storytellings about all the ways in which Sandy touched our lives. During these pandemic days, we are unfortunately unable to do so. And so it is my hope that you will find strength and courage amongst each other. I tear the ribbon that you are wearing as a way of showing how Sandra's death is torn at the fabric of your lives, is torn at your hearts. It represents a wound that you carry on the inside, and it displays that on the outside.
Huh? Oh, I'd like to see.
Goodness. That's okay. May Sandy's memory be a source of courage and strength to you. And again, through each other's love of one another, may you find ways to continue to find strength and courage as you travel through the valley of the shadow of death. Lech l'chaim, lech l'shalom, the psalmist writes, go forth to life, go forth to peace. Having brought Sandy here to this sacred place, go forth to life. Tend to the wounds of the living and share all of those great stories of Sandy. This concludes our funeral service for Sandra Paskus.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie.